Oh, what a lovely sound, recording in process. I mean, especially when I can sit here in front of this amazing collage and stare at Jay and go, I mean, the log cabin 35 years ago, actually, it was September of 1989, although it changed my date over a Valium. It's a part of my story. But in September of 1989, I wandered into the log cabin, which is like an American Legion post, a funky little building that we have fought to keep from getting torn down in West Hollywood. And I felt safe. And I look at Jay and I know how that felt then, and I know how it feels now. And the difference is that I can look at who do I know that I don't know for sure. It's getting harder and harder. Norm from West. I don't know if I've ever met Norm, but I feel like I'm safe with Norm. I mean, that part of that part of my way of living life that was propelled by an ego, that was manufactured by fear. uh, was a hell of a wall to get over to get what was waiting for us here, and that is that place when you begin to feel that. And I love the expression, the center of the herd, whether it's politically correct or not. I love this center of the herd. I love that I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's things that have changed. One of the things that's changed, the phrase normie was always really weird. Now it's we can actually get rid of it because I think we are the normies. The world out there is just out of its goddamn mind. It's insane. But the place where I could sit down and feel like this is there is a sense of reason and a spiritual safety zone in Alcoholics Anonymous that is just, how did I get so lucky? It is absolutely magical. I am drawn as much today, I think even more as the time passed, more and more and more. I became just enamored with the absolute mystical side of this deal. The fact that 5 years before I was born, two alcoholics got together and found that if they worked with another, they could stay sober. I mean, the timing of the planets and all of us sliding through time and the universe, and they keep discovering that it's bigger than we thought. Turns out it's bigger than we thought, Eddie. It's whatever. That Bill and Bob chose this path and saved our lives is amazing. Spiritual life is not a theory is my favorite line. Yeah, to me it's the most important line in the big book. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it, and that becomes we get to live it, and then at a certain point, to me, it's like there's really no choice involved. The spiritual life is going to be rolling on, but I can be a part. I can be a sidecar to it, or standing in front of it, going, "Oh my God, wait a minute! No, not yet. I'm not. Whatever." This morning in my home meeting, a woman who I greatly admire and have for 33 or 34 years was sharing about some of the health issues she has, and she was asked to read something from the big book and comment on it. And she talked about, the doctor addict, the acceptance is, and I mean it's at this point in my life and perhaps yours as well. It's it this very what used to be page 449 in the third edition, and then they moved it. How dare they move it? Because I was so hip when I was going, page 449, I'm accepting, but the conversation around that, and it occurs to me that just as my refrigerator has an alarm on it, I can be sitting up there happily typing away on a song that I know is going to change the world, and I wish whoever the hell is making that noise outside would get to it and stop it, and then I go, wait a minute, refrigerator. I go downstairs and shut the refrigerator door, and the sound is gone. And I've had that wonderful warning that, that put an end to the distraction and the annoyance. And I think in some ways, that whole thing about acceptance being the key is like that little alarm on my refrigerator, in the sense that when the inevitable, when the inevitable comes face to face with, with the unaccepting, with unacceptable, a battle, consumes that is unwinnable, and it's just an energy drain. It's the kind of energy drain of that buzzer going on for hours if I don't go in and shut the door. And the other side of that is that I don't do both sides of a conversation or both sides of an event. I show up as my name is Paul and I'm an alcoholic. I have a higher power. I have a sponsor. I have a home group, Lucky 13. One of the members, Mark, is here, which is also very reassuring to see somebody from your home group and somebody from your first home group in the same meeting. Um, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. It's And I'm a little, incidentally, I just did like an 11-hour flight back from London a day before yesterday. And I'm 84. I feel like a tired 37, but I'm 84. And I noticed that the longer flights begin to kick my ass a little more than usual. So it's like, all right, sit down, Paul. And are you going to be sparkly? Well, maybe not, but you'll be truthful. And what you will see most of all is gratitude. I mean, uh, grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous, grateful for every breath. Uh, I was raised in a household where, everybody was alcoholics. I mean, I'm not sure about my mother. She drank every day, but she was always sweet and did all the things moms and wives, I'm sure, are supposed to do. My dad was 6'2". He talked about the fact that he drank every day, but he never missed a day on the goddamn job. And for years, as we moved around, he was in construction, job to job to job. I went to 9 schools by the time I was in the ninth grade. And I remember being in the car with him when I felt like my concentration was keeping the car on the road, that it was all over the road, and he was clearly really drunk. And people would say, Paul, you're going to kill yourself. You're going to kill those kids if you don't stop drinking. And he never quit drinking. But that came true. He hit the abutment of a bridge when I was 13, and he was killed. He died a week later. He was a sweet drunk. I mean, I wish he had found this. I think he would have been drawn into the fellowship. I think he would have, like me, would have wanted to really impress you with how charming he was and how quickly he took to all this and all. But at some point, if it worked, if he quit drinking and he began to listen a little, like we do, he would have fallen into that beautiful place where you take a deep breath and you feel safe and you feel like you found a way to live and all. And the steps, become, and it's an interesting, little kind of a whiplash for me because, one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and cocaine were a large part of what made me feel confident enough to dive into trying to be an actor at first, and then later on, when Noah's a gift, when I couldn't make a living as an actor, I started writing songs and I found a career and I found a life and all. But so I'm powerless over alcohol, and yet I used it. I treated my alcoholism with alcohol. I treated my drug addiction with drugs, and and it gave me that cocky arrogance to go in and say, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And in some cases, I did. What was as I was building this life of of a career, but I'm also very much aware that I was building a life where I was getting a lot of attention, which I'm sure was a huge part of it. I was also, as my father had, those blinders that tighten with as you advance in your addiction, as I advanced in my addiction, when there was attention to the career and trying to win the awards, make the money, get the attention. But my children and my wife and my friends were denied, you know, a good fellow who was a good dad, a good dad. And maybe I didn't know how to be one because my dad was never really there and all. Many of us do a little therapy along the way. And in early sobriety, I did, and uh, it helped. I couldn't really put my finger on it. Recently, I thought about a movie that's a favorite movie of mine. I don't know if you ever saw a movie called How Green Was My Valley, but How Green Was My Valley was a mining story. It takes place back in like the early 1900s. And the union has come to town, and Donald Crisp plays the father of two older sons and then a little boy played by Roddy McDowell. And the young sons want a union, and they want that damn union. And Dad, we're gonna. And Donald Crisp, who is this Welsh miner, is totally opposed to the union. And he says there's a scene when he's sitting at the table and his sons are talking about, Dad, you've got to get with this. And he says, there'll be no goddamn talk of unions in this house. And then the boys stand up and they go, then this is no longer our home. And they walk out. And he's left sitting alone at the table. And at the end of the table to the side is his little boy, Ronnie McDowell, who's about maybe 9 years old. And Roddy sits there for a little while and he goes, and he sits there a little longer and he goes, and Donald Crisp, his father, says, yes, my son, I know you're there. And when I thought of that, it made me cry. And I realized that maybe that's what I was missing in my life. That's what I wasn't getting to hear. And I think that there's a part of the way I've lived my life and what I've looked for in the way of attention and affection and all that is related to stuff that's in our, that, as Freud would say, we look at some other or whatever, there has been a slow growth of within this spiritual life that has, I mean, the idea that what I got out of this deal was I quit drinking is absolutely true. But what I got out of this life is a journey that is remarkable. And in early sobriety, when my dad died, I was shipped off to live with an aunt and uncle in Long Beach, where everybody is like 6'2" and tan. What color I have, I got from the light in my refrigerator. I'm just not a sportsman, And I had a really slow. I was tiny. And my dad pointed that out before I passed away. He said, he's 8 years old. Should he still be running under coffee tables? And my mom was like, no, probably not. They took me to a doctor in Albuquerque who said, I can make this kid grow. And he gave me male hormone shots. Well, it was the wrong thing to do because it closes off the bones, but it also kicked me into puberty at like 9. So all of a sudden, I had no interest in my toy chest, but my Aunt Edna's chest was something that fascinated me. And my, my family noticed that, and it was like, whoa, 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 what's going on? And I was saying to all the little girls, let's get in the closet and kiss like they do in the movies. Wanting to get in the closet or in a little place in Malibu and kiss like they do in the movies. It's cost me a lot of money through the years. But they saw this and they stopped the shots, and it just screwed up my body clock. So I didn't hit puberty till I was like 22. So going to high school, I mean, I felt different. I was different. I was physically different. And I just, if you'd asked me about it, if you wanted to talk to me about anything, I would have just tapped my watch and waved, and I was too busy. I avoided all the stuff that I talk about now, even at an AA pitch. Uh, but I mean, I wanted to be an actor. I felt like Montgomery Clift, and a lot of you aren't going to be old enough to know who I'm talking about. But Montgomery Clift was this tortured actor, and I felt like Montgomery Clift. Unfortunately, I looked like Haley Mills, so I was not going to get the acting jobs that I thought I should be playing. So that all fell apart. I started writing songs as kind of a journaling, and I had a great success. And the ways that I got to the record companies and the publishing companies and all, nothing was anything that I did that was constructive. It was it was situations that were dropped in my lap again and again and again. And I had I started recording, and I got a little bit of time on the tube, and was getting a lot of attention. And my family, as the years passed, my family was getting less and less of me. The drugs and alcohol were getting more and more of me, and eventually I left my wife and kids for a 22-year-old psych major who said that she loved me too much to watch me die. So I tried to get sober for her. I went to a place called Schick Shadel, uh, and where they do aversion therapy. Uh, I Uh, I actually had Sobriety. There's somebody I sponsored who's brilliant named Wes, who should come and speak for you, Jay. And Wes always talks about sobriety. I had 7 months with no sponsor, no program, no spiritual life, but 7 months without alcohol or drugs, and I was charming. And I went to Jamaica to work on a project. I was supposed to be writing the songs for a musical. And all I could think about is if I could get one more hit, it would all come back. All I need is one more hit. And I stayed up all night. I was at a home in Ocho Rios with a beautiful pool. I'm sitting out by the pool with a pad of paper and a little recorder. And I wrote a song, and I went to bed about 4 in the morning going, "You are genius. You are, God bless your talent. You are going to be back with this one." I got a little sleep. About 1 o'clock, I get up and I wander out by the pool, and I sit down with my recorder to hear this gem that I've written. And there's a guy wandering around with a tray with ice and rum and all those things. And I listen to what I've written, and I hear it. I mean, I remember the melody. "I took my place beside you, girl." I don't remember the words, but I definitely will never forget the melody because I had rewritten "O Little Town of Bethlehem." "I took my place beside you, girl." It's just, I went, oh, Jesus. I mean, Jesus. I mean, and at that exact moment, this guy walks up and says, "Would you like a rum and coke, Mr. Williams?" I went, "I would love a very light rum and coke. I'm the Paul Williams. I've got the statues on the shelves, and the success I can, and I'm a man of some willpower. I can handle one rum and coke, a light rum and coke." At 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Jamaica, I had a light rum and coke. At 2 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was at Bob Marley's grave explaining reggae to a lot of black people I didn't know. And I know nothing about reggae. But you put drugs in my system and alcohol in my system, and I become a chronic and habitual liar. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm not enough. I found out when I got sober that I'm not a pilot. It turns out, and it lingers. If somebody walks up to me and they go, if Mary walks up to me, she goes, "You're in the music business. Do you know Sidney Vargan?" And my head will be nodding like the little doggy in the back of the window. Yeah, Sidney Vargan, and I have no idea who Sidney Vargan is. But there's this part of me that feels like I'm supposed to know because Mary asked me. And then eventually my sobriety catches up with my recovery catches up with my lying, nodding head, and then I stop and I say, "No, I don't know who that is." And she goes, "Well, it's my sister's husband's. I don't know. Anyway, he's a songwriter, and he wants to be anyway. I thought you might know him. And that's part of who I still am. One of the great thrills in my life, one of the highest, I always say that clear vision is a better buzz. One of the great buzzes of clear vision is to clean something like that up. I mean, even the little things, just to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, you know what? I lied to you last night. I said I had a plane to catch and everything like that. The plane's not till tomorrow morning. I don't know why, but I didn't feel like I could just tell you that I wanted to have the night at home. But just having that. At any rate, I started drinking again. And what happened that is the best part of my story is in 1989, I went to Oklahoma City to play a concert. And I'd been up about 3 days and nights and very little sleep. And I was staying at a hotel and it was an afternoon gig at a university. And the promoter of the gig came to get me. And the way he describes it, he says, we were walking down the hall and I was talking to you and it was sort of normal. You were sort of normal. And all of a sudden it was like somebody picked you up by the seat of the pants and the nape of your neck and threw you against the wall. Uh, and I was tortured for about 40 minutes by an invisible monster that nobody could see but me. I was thrown down escalator stairs in that little hotel. There's no escalator in that hotel, but the stairs were moving for me. He put me in the car to take me over to the gig and turn me over to my band. And looking at the side view mirror, I could see this miniature, almost ventriloquist dummy size version of myself biting me on the neck and twisting. I mean, out of my mind, out of my mind. Uh, I went. I postponed the gig, did the gig the next day, and I told the audience that I'd had a reaction to my meds. And I told them the truth because for 49 years, those were my meds. That's how I lived. I did the gig the next day. Monday I got on an airplane. I flew back to LA. I drank on the plane. When I hit the ground at LAX, I called my dealer and I left my dealer many, many messages until she called me back. And I would get I thought about this in rehab. I would call like, damn it, it's Paul, and I would be nice or try to because I didn't want to offend her where she would stop doing business with me. But it was like, hi, honey, it's Paul, and just checking in, and then I'm calling in, a little later, and I'm out of cocaine, and I'm getting sloppy drunk, and I'm leaving message after message, and finally she answers the phone. Hello, hello, Paulie. I said, yeah, 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 it's Paul. Have you got anything? She says, well, sure, honey. I said, because I've called you. Oh, I got all your calls. You want me to come over? And I go, that'd be nice. And and I feel great. I mean, that person that was on the phone that is falling apart and is like cannot stop shaking and is getting sore muscles everywhere and all of a sudden it's like and I even look better. I weigh 187, but I'm making myself a drink with a little ice in there with the vodka and looking at myself in the mirror and I'm going like, you little stud muffin. You good looking little sucker. I'm feeling good. What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? Because I haven't done any of that yet. I think what I was experiencing was the power of faith. I mean, faith in poison, but if faith in that poison is that powerful to drag me up out of the cellar, out of a soundproof cellar, in torture, to have this just calm and whatever. Imagine what a faith in a true loving God, a true higher power will do. And that occurred to me. That occurred to me in rehab. What happened was I went home, I drank, I got drugs on a Monday. On a Saturday morning, the phone rang and it was a doctor, it was a psychiatrist. He said, "Well, I found a place for you." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, you called me last night and you said you wanted at home, incidentally. And I'm not quite sure how you got that number, but you called me and said you wanted to get sober." And I said, "No, no, I, I did not. I mean, maybe, but somebody else was using my body." And he didn't laugh. He said, "Well, you called me and you said that you didn't want to drive drunk with your kids in the car anymore, like your dad did with you. And you said you didn't want to lie every day and sneak out the puppy door to get drugs instead of fixing the front door. You had a squeaky, went so far to tell me you had a girlfriend asleep upstairs and a squeaky front door, and you didn't want to." I didn't hear much of what he said after that thing about my kids because that touched me in a way that was just, I mean, and I said, I'll go. I want to go. I went to a place in Century City called New Beginnings, and I loved it. I mean, I just loved it. Somebody slapped a copy of the big book in front of me at rehab, and as soon as I got out, somebody slapped a copy of Emmett Fox's writings in front of me, and I was like, I mean, I was on fire. I would sleep with a 2 gram bottle of cocaine in my right hand, and all of a sudden I'm sleeping through the night, and I'm waking up, and my hand doesn't hurt. Incidentally, it does every now and then still. If I decide that I'm going to take charge of things around me and, well, I'll straighten this out in the morning, and I go to bed with that kind of thinking, I wake up and my right hand will be hurting. It's a billboard. It's a sober billboard that is just a gift. I love being sober. I love going to the log cabin. Everything that comes out of my mouth, my sobriety date is March 15th, 1990. As I said, I had a great sponsor. His name was Jerry, and he was about my size with a big mustache. He looked like Yosemite Sam, and he was famous for saying to me, "How are you treating the world today, Paulie?" And I'd say the first time I was like, "Haven't you had a slip of the tongue? Don't you mean how's the world treating me?" He said, "Oh, I don't give a rat's but how the world treats you." He said, "Well, I do because I love you." He says, "But the fact is, I can't do anything about that. I'm not sure you can." He says, "Well, you can. If you are vigilant about the way you treat your fellow man and woman, everything in your life will get better." And that's a promise. And he was right. He was a dear and sweet man. At 6 months, I had my first acting job on March 15th, and I had a headache the day before, and I was scared, and I hadn't really had an acting job in sobriety in a long time. And my girlfriend said, "You want a Valium?" And I said, "I used to have a prescription for those." And while I'm talking, I'm eating the Valium. And I never told Jerry about it. And it took me about 3 years, and when it hit me like a sledgehammer, that I'd never told Jerry. And I talked to him about everything. So I called Jerry and I said, "Jerry, I got to change my date." He said, "Oh man, I'm so sorry." "Oh, Jesus, God, what? Why? What happened?" I said, "Well, I took one of Judy's Valiums." And he said, "All right, all right. We start again." "When?" I said, "March 15th, or March 14th, 1990. And he went, "Well, that's a hell of a 10th step. Promptly admitted you were wrong." I said, "Jerry, it wasn't a slip until I realized I hadn't told you. It's that ego wall. We'll find a way to hide behind it. No, it's just remarkable." But I changed my bait, and it's like Sandy Beach talks about putting down the rock. It felt like I put down the rock. And I loved Alcoholics Anonymous from the beginning. I didn't chase a career. All I wanted to do was be around recover. I did something probably no other alcoholic had ever done. I went to UCLA and I got my certification as a drug and alcoholic counselor. I entered the Polly Lama period of my sobriety where come touch the hem and I will strike you sober. I went to work for the Musicians Assistance Program as a volunteer, and I know of one life I saved, and you're looking at it, and it was just, and my spirit, my life, my connection to the rest of the world has had been through my music, through showing off, and you took care of that, you replaced it, you became my connection. For the first time in my life, I've never felt as comfortable, as loved, and as useful. I mean, that's the amazing thing about it. I get up in the morning. My life is really simple. This whole thing about, a God of our understanding is like not me. I'm the God of my higher power, who I refer to as the big amigo, is just so massive. Beyond my understanding. But I pray, because I know it works. I get up in the morning and I say, "Lead me where you need me." I say, "Surprise me, God." It implies complete trust. I'm handing the reins of my day to my higher power. Lead me where you need me. And incidentally, one of the great gifts of my recovery is at 10 years, I found out that I had nothing to do with that first decision. I mean, I made the decision, but the phone call I told you about. At 10 years sober, I went to Nashville to write to write some songs. I've spent my whole life writing codependent anthems, ouch mommy songs. I won't last a day without you is not a healthy thought. I know that, but that's who I am. But I was in Nashville writing. They said it was asked if I would go to speak at the jail. H&I love it. I mean, and it's like just a buzz, I go to the jail. I speak with a couple other guys, and I'm walking out of there, and it's like we were fam. I mean, oh my God, did you see the light change in the room? It was like we, we were we were on fire in there, just blah blah blah, full of self. When I go back to the hotel. And the hotel I'm staying at has got a small lobby that is so full, though, guys that are 10 feet tall that I can barely make it through them. I make my way through this whatever this convention is, and I go to my room and I'm feeling like this combination of Jiminy Cricket and Gandhi. I'm like, I have carried the message behind them, into the dangerous world of the. Anyway, I get to my room and my magnetic key won't work. And it's a quick trip from Gandhi to Himmler for me. I'm just like, son of a. This is the third night in a row that my magnetic key doesn't work. So I go down, I go through all these guys. They're so tall. They've all got belt buckles with steer heads on them and stuff. A hug could, give me brain damage. I go to the guy behind the counter and I go, "It's not your fault. I know. You have trained me. You have taught me restraint of pen and tongue." So I go, "I know it's not your fault. But why should I? I mean, this is the third night that my key has not worked in my room. Why should I have to go through this?" At that point, somebody taps me on my shoulder. And this is the best thing I get to tell you at tonight as I babble and bounce around with my story. This is as good as it gets. I feel a tap on my shoulder and I turn around and I see a guy standing there and he says, "Hi, I don't want to bother you. I booked you. I'm a concert booker. I booked you 10 years ago. We're bookers, like we book performing arts centers and rodeos and jugglers and clowns and songwriters and performing arts, and I booked you 10 years ago." And it says on his thing, Gary G, Oklahoma City. And I went, "Oh my God, are you the guy when I did my Linda Blair, lick me? My head was spinning around." And he said, "Yeah, yeah, that was me." And I was like, "Well, I'm sober and I just spoke with the jail and blah, blah, Polly this and blah, blah, Polly that. And I spoke at Founders Day and blah, 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 blah. I just me, the opposite of out of self, into who I am, how wonderful I am, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Yeah, I heard in the rooms that you were sober." And I went, "Okay." And I went, "Oh my God, are you a friend of Bill?" And he said, "Yeah." He reached in his pocket and he pulled out a chip for 17 years. And I'm quick, so I did the math. And I went, you were 7 years sober when that happened." He said, "Yeah." I said, "What did you think?" And he said, "I was never so scared in my life. I thought you were going to die." He said, "You were out of your mind." He didn't say, "I flew you in at some expense, to play to an audience that was expecting a professional. And this is what I got." He said he was scared. I said, "I was really bad. I'm so sorry." Uh, "What'd you do?" He said, "I called my sponsor." If you're new, I mean, there's 4 pages of fantastic alcoholics here. There's somebody out there that's new. There's a wonderful lesson there. You meet some idiotic, arrogant little madman. Call your sponsor. Call your sponsor. Because God knows what might have happened. I said, "What'd your sponsor do?" He said, "He hung up on me." And I was like, "New sponsor time. Why would he hang up on you?" And he said, "So we could both start calling alcoholics." And we put together a prayer circle of Oklahoma City alcoholics. And we prayed that in or out of the rooms that you would find relief to your addiction and your alcoholism, that you would find peace. And 5 days later, I called a doctor in a blackout. And I had for 10 years been saying this is all a gift and not believing it. Lying in the midst of the gift that I was bragging about getting, I believed I worked for part of it. And there was part of me that was like, I speak when I'm asked to, sponsored a bunch of guys, not as many as most of you here. You guys are magnificent. You men and women, and incidentally, I sometimes feel like I should refer to God as they, because it's just so massive. And what I experience here is such massive love that you almost can't hang a pronoun on it. It's just the elegance of kindness in action, and it's Alcoholics Anonymous. But when I met Gary, and I'd heard what had happened and about the prayer circle, it all became a gift. And I mean, I faced that. I faced, you haven't worked for any of it. And it's just the easiest. It's just the easiest. And there's a safety and there's a trust. And learning things like to be able to say things like, "I don't know how to do this, but something inside me does." And maybe I was born with that something inside myself, but I got to tell you, I would have died with it unnoticed if it hadn't been for you. Because what you did is you showed me example after example, example after example of how to deal with the impossible and stay in the room, stay in the moment, keep believing, keep pretending. If I want to quote one of mine, keep believing, keep pretending. That's what life's like a movie, write your own ending. Keep believing, keep pretending. We've done just what we set out to do, thanks to the lovers, the dreamers, and you. I thought I was writing about a frog. I was writing about you guys. I can I cannot tell you how my life is. I mean, it's gotten to the point where I I go back to certain things like the power of myth, and I'll read something like the power of myth that was important when I was first sober. Well, of course, my ego loved the hero's journey. That would be me, of course. It's like I'm so predictable. But I look at these well disguised camouflage little pieces that I was led to. Uh, a woman at the log cabin, and we've got to get in close to 5 minutes now, I would think, but a woman at the log cabin, Jay, uh, whose husband was a famous director. Remember telling her stories about almost drowning, stealing booze when I was like 13 or 14 or 15, swimming over to a boat and getting up on a boat with a bunch of kids and putting the bottles in my trunks and all and trying to swim back and almost drowning. And this woman, I wish I could remember her name, is going around at 84. She said, "Oh, so you had a billboard." I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "It's a billboard. Think about it. Alcohol was about to drown you, and you were just a teenager, a teenie." She said, "Look at your life as it goes by and watch for those billboards. Watch for those billboards." It's it's an amazing process that and the humor of it is also huge. I mean, I finally learned to listen. Now I can't hear. It's like perfect. It's perfect. I tried to get off Facebook for years. They wouldn't let me. And then I got kicked off for pretending to be a celebrity. Life is just trust and let it unfold. Um, I have a friend who's newly sober, trying to get sober, and he sent me a text with a story that he said, this is a great story for you to tell when you speak. And it was a story about Margaret Mead, and his name is Sean, and I wrote Sean back. I said, "I get it. You're right. It's a great story." Margaret Mead is, of course, the great anthropologist. And she was teaching a college class, first year class on anthropology. And one of the students raised his hand to ask a question. He said, "Dr. Mead, what do you consider the first sign of civilization?" And she thought about it for a little bit. She said, "I think the first sign of civilization that any of us have found is a healed femur." And the kid was like, I mean, he was expecting maybe a bowl. Could we find bowls, broken bowls, or tools, or this is America, a weapon? Yeah, there you go. But a broken femur, I mean, a healed femur, what's that all about? And she said, "Well, the femur is the largest bone in the human body, and it takes about 15 weeks to heal when it breaks. And in the animal world, if you broke your femur, you had a new job. It was lunch. You were gonna be eaten by some weird animal or whatever."
5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. But when we found the healed femur, we realized that whoever this person was, somebody else, or more than likely, a group of people picked this injured person up, took them to a place where they would be safe while they healed, brought them food and water, protected them until they could take care of themselves. And I went, "Wow, Sean, I get it. Yeah, that's Alcoholics Anonymous. The first sign of civilization to the world is one of the world's great experts on anthropology, is describing what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for I think all of us. It picked us up. And you put your arms around me and you go, and I think we all get what we need. They're the guy. I mean, the first time I went to a meeting from rehab, I was up in where the choir sits, and I can't remember the name of that church, Jay, but all of us from New Beginnings went over there, and I'm sitting up there, and the meeting's down below. And at the end of the meeting, I stood up and I said, I'm at New Beginnings. We're all in treatment over there, and I just wanted to say how much we appreciate. And somebody yelled, "Sit down and shut up!" to my tender little heart, and I did, and I needed that, you know. And I was 49 years old, and I was the Paul Williams, and nobody talked. You did. You told me what needed to be said. You didn't sit me on my knee and say, "Listen, a tender little guy like you that writes those sweet little songs, we're going to take good care of you." You said, "Sit down and shut up." My sponsor said, "No, you cannot use a computer to write your fourth step. Write it by hand, and I don't want to see any prose. I want to hear just read the truth." Thanks for saving my life. I'm so thrilled to be here. And turned out I was a little sparkly and a lot of truth. So you bring out the best in me. God bless. I'll keep coming back.
Yay. I love you so much.